and welcome to In Conversation, our periodic discussion of all things political. And today my guest is MLA Norm MacDonald from the NDP party. Norm, welcome to In Conversations again. It's always a pleasure having you here.
It's nice. Thanks for the opportunity, as always.
Well, good. Now, I'd like to point out to our viewers today that this interview is being conducted at the Revelstoke Visual Arts Society, and where they have a major exhibition, two major exhibitions. One is of installation art here in Revelstoke, and the other exhibition is of photography by high school students who went on the Glacier Adventure Stewardship Program trip. That's a mouthful, but the photos are absolutely stunning. So if you've got an opportunity, please do come down to the Visual Arts Center on Wilson Street and take a look, because this stuff is really very good. It'll make you think. All of it will make you think. At any rate, thank you. And thank you, Karen, for being a camera lady.
You're very welcome.
Appreciate it. Well, we've got a few things. So
yes.
There are things that you and I haven't done this for months.
It's been a while. Of course, there's been a federal election, and we've been sitting. So the legislature has sat in the fall this year, which is very good, and we sat from the beginning of September through to just earlier in the week. So a good session, and as I say, it's important that we sit in the fall. Too often the government skips the fall session, and this year we've had it, and I think some good work has been done in question period to raise issues that are important issues for people in British Columbia.
Yeah, and there are some important issues for people, not just in the rest of the province, but there are issues that are of concern to us here in Revelstoke, and we'll attend some of them. In particular, we'll also discuss the Highway Mall situation to a certain extent. But first off, let's start with talking about where are we going with this? With the emails.
Okay.
Controversy and their deletions, and now there's an investigation into this whole matter, is there not?
Yes. So I mean, it has different names, but they're calling it triple delete. But essentially, the government has an obligation to keep records of decision making and the discussion that leads up to decisions. And this is for the past 140 years. There's a requirement to save documents that are used in formulating public policy. That hasn't changed. What has changed to a certain extent over the past number of decades is that more and more of it is done electronically. And what that has meant is that rules have to be put in place to retain electronic documents. And those rules are in place. And what has frustrated opposition for quite a long time is that in asking for documents that we have a legal right to receive, we often get a response of no documents existing. So because people will leak documents, we often know they do exist, or if we go in a different route, we find they do exist, but we are told when we ask for documents from the Premier's office that none exist. When we go to the Ministry of Transportation and ask for documents, we're told they don't exist. And what we've known for a long time is that the government has very consciously been managing the documents so as to get rid of them, and to get rid of evidence of very often things that are frankly embarrassing to them. Documents that would contradict what they've said publicly, or things that are simply an embarrassment for a host of reasons. So the actual investigation that started this goes back to the Highway of Tears, which is, as people will know, it's Highway 16 up in the north. A number of murders, a number of women have gone missing, and there has been work done. And one of the recommendations was that there be some form of public transportation along there. Now, the Minister of Transportation, Todd Stone, asserted that in community conversations, community leaders and people who had participated in those meetings had said they didn't need public transportation, that there were other things that could be done that were of a higher priority, and that's not what we had heard. So we asked for the documents. Where are the minutes of the meetings? Where are the emails? Where's the evidence that would substantiate what the minister was asserting in the House? And the answer we got back is there are no documents. Well, anybody who knows if a government holds a meeting, bless you, if they hold a meeting, they will have staff that are there and they're generating documents that are part of the public record. And so we asked the minister, or the independent officer that's responsible for freedom of information, to investigate. And they did an investigation, and in the course of that investigation, a gentleman, a civil servant, came forward from the Ministry of Transportation and said that they were asked to look for documents in an official freedom of information request, and when they located these documents, a staff member, a political staff member in the minister's office said, well, get rid of it, delete it. And not only delete it once or a second time, but there's a third delete that is supposed to permanently remove it from the electronic record, right? So it's a triple delete. So it's quite a complicated way of doing things, and they're not supposed to do it. So when the civil servant refused to do it, the political appointee removed his keyboard and did it for him. Now, when, of course, none of that is allowed.
Clearly not.
Yeah, so this led to a report that came out in the middle of the session that said that this is regular practice. There is currently an RCMP investigation of the staff member who did the deletion. A couple of other disturbing things is, first, the government sent lawyers to try to keep this report from becoming public until after the session.
Sure.
Secondly, the person who came forward and said that this is what happened, the government attacked them, saying that they had to be let go because they weren't doing the job properly, and that they were just a disgruntled employee.
Tell me what you can about the political appointee who did this. Was it someone fairly senior in the ministerial staff, or was it a minion who was told to do that?
I think it's pretty clear. Well, first, they're not. These are people that are political appointees. So they are. I think this individual is not terribly old or hasn't been in the civil service for a long time, but very clearly, this is the way things are done. The Minister of Transportation.
What's the way the minister wants it done?
Well, when the Minister of Transportation was asked about deleting, he said, well, to make space, I triple delete, which makes no sense at all, because you can create space by simply deleting it. But there's also rules around how you keep information. And I think it's important to note that if you're getting rid of information and getting rid of a record, then clearly there's no question they know that they're breaking the rules, because they've been told many times about the proper way to handle this. So part of the defense was, this is all new, emails are new. So clearly that's not much of a defense. And they said, well, we're going to get it right in the next time. Well, they've been told 2 or 3 times, very clearly in a written form, how to save documents and what are the types of documents that need to be saved and how they should be handled. So this is purposeful. It is clear that staff have been trained at the political level to do things in a certain way, and we see it in the 3 ministries that were looked at. Well, it's the Premier's office, the Ministry of Transportation, and then the ministry responsible for freedom of information. In each case, there was supposedly no correspondence at all from key people throughout those ministries. So they're getting rid of everything.
Yeah, I as a journalist, and even just as a citizen, this gives me a real pause for concern, because if you're eliminating or altering the record of what has really happened in any given circumstance, then clearly whatever it is that you're saying or doing, presenting afterwards, is a lie. Even if it's a lie of omission, because you can't claim anything. However, I have always understood, and if somebody knows something different, please do contact me or contact Norm. You cannot, once something is out there on the internet, even if it's in the world of the email, it's there forever. You can't, you can find it. So it may be expensive and it may be difficult to do, but something that has been, just because you've deleted something off a government server, doesn't mean it's really gone, A, from that server, or B, from anywhere else in the World Wide Web. So.
Yeah, so I'm not obviously an expert, and I think that some of these documents can be recovered with the right degree of expertise. But triple deletion it's a fairly elaborate way of getting rid of documentation, and then
or it lets you think you've done it,
or maybe it lets you think you've done it, but it certainly means that a journalist or an opposition member or a member of the public certainly has no way of getting to the truth on issues. And remember, these are issues that deal with behavior by government that's really questionable. And I'll give you one example. We had a number of researchers that were looking at certain pharmaceuticals and their effectiveness, including a drug that is used to Chempex. It's used to help people get off nicotine. Now, Chempex has one of the side effects is the possibility of there are some very negative side effects. Suicidal thinking. So you have researchers at UBC that were and other universities, University of Victoria, that were looking at these pharmaceuticals as part of an enterprise that was set up back in the 90s, which is this therapeutics initiative. So it looks at drugs and it decides how effective they are and whether they are the type of pharmaceuticals that the government should be paying for. So it can save government a lot of money if it's ineffective, and it probably has saved, in the course of its work, billions of dollars for taxpayers. And it also looks to make sure that we're not paying for a drug that has a side effect that is potentially deadly, which, the question.
Well, when it boils down to it with drugs, I take a lot more than you do.
Yes, yeah, there's always side effects.
There are always side effects, many of those side effects, if you watch the American advertising on drugs, it's interesting to see how they spin all that. It's, at the tail end they start listing all this stuff.
That's right.
They make your nipples fall off, or cause you. Suicidal thinking is clearly a common side effect. There are all kinds of others. Some of them very bizarre and very serious.
So what's interesting about this is this initiative is something that pharmaceutical companies have always wanted to get rid of. The pharmaceutical companies donate heavily to the BC Liberals and at different times tried to shut down this program. And for the Premier as well, she received in her leadership bid a lot of support. So that's out there. Connected to this or not connected, it's out there as something that as opposition you would wonder about.
And if you're a member of the public, you'd wonder about.
So the government announced about 2 or 3 years ago that there were 8 researchers that were misusing patients' data, and said that there was an RCMP investigation. This was something that those researchers saw when they read the front page of the Vancouver Sun. We know that information was provided to the Vancouver Sun out of the Premier's office. So, as it turns out, none of what was asserted has turned out to be true. So, the individuals that for 2 years were told, the public was told were misusing data, and would no longer, they lost their jobs as well. It turns out that none of what was asserted by the government actually turned out to be true. There was a gentleman who, for whatever reason, nevertheless, he took his own life. It was somebody who was just about to get their doctorate when this happened. For whatever reason, shortly afterwards, they committed suicide. So these are all serious, questionable actions. And when we asked for the public records around who made the decision, did it come out of the Premier's office? Was there actually an RCMP investigation ever? Turns out there wasn't. Like, these are all serious questions that an opposition and the public will be interested in knowing. Like, what is going on here? Is this an abuse of government power, which is, governments have substantial power that you have to check? When we asked for any records, there were none. Whenever we put in a freedom of information, they say there's no records on this at all. Well, this is a seriously embarrassing, problematic situation for government, and if one is going to check the role of government to make sure they do things properly, this is one example where you want to hold people accountable, but you can't hold them accountable either as a journalist or as an opposition member if they're able to destroy the public record. And that effectively was done. And it seems that that's just one example of where the public record doesn't exist. And it seems like it's, it seems like it's sort of inside baseball or not hugely important, but it's an abuse.
It's like insider trading.
It's an abuse.
It is an abuse, and it is illegal, and it's immoral.
It's wrong, yeah, and there has to be consequences.
It's freaking wrong.
But so far, I mean, there is a RCMP investigation, but if somebody's to be held accountable, it will be one of these minions, as you call them. It'll be somebody low on the totem pole. But the broader issue is the government as a whole. If this is regular practice, then it speaks to a culture of deception, which is really troubling. Governments over time, I think they can fall into patterns of things that work for them but aren't to the public good. And certainly,
if you're a political appointee, and I've been one,
yeah,
federally, so I understand the process. I understand what is expected when you work for a proper minister or MP, what you can and cannot do. They're very clear about that. Yeah. If you want to play games, there are ways to do that. And it sounds to me like that's what's happened here, because clearly these minions, if they're relatively junior staff, they think they're important because they're political. Yeah. If they've been told that this can be done, they think they have the right to do it without direction. And that is really dangerous, where you've got junior political staff acting as though they are entitled by virtue of their appointment to do whatever it is they think they need to do to protect their MLA or their minister, and that, or the premier for that matter, and that these people need to be taught a lesson in reality.
There has to be accountability. So there's no question there is a pattern here. There's no question that it's not just unique to BC. I mean, the tricks that they're using are the same tricks that Hillary Clinton's in trouble for. Ministers also use private accounts, like Hotmail accounts, that then they say aren't part. When a Freedom of Information request comes in, they don't. Yeah. They say, well, that's private. Well, we know just from emails streams that very often they're talking politics and they're using a private email account to get around freedom of information. So it's a big issue, and it's one that there has to be some political accountability, and so far the government has shown no willingness to be held accountable. Instead, yeah. So it's a problem, but it's something that the broader public should care about, because it speaks to a degree of arrogance that's problematic, and maybe in every government over time it develops, but it has to be checked, right? Like you can't do business that way. If you look at the organizations that try to get rid of their record, and they tend to be criminal organizations, right? Like you're hiding something, and if you weren't hiding something, you wouldn't be clearing out the documents.
That's right. Even if you're not a criminal organization, if say you're a political party that is on the outs with the public and you're trying to cleanse your record, or at least whitewash it, then that's what you're going to do too, and that's wrong.
And it's not
just for the record. Yeah. As some people know, I'm a conservative and have been for many years. Despite Norm and I are good friends, we have our political differences, but we are absolutely on the same page when it comes to wrongdoing in the political arena. And there is no excuse and there's no reason for anybody to start trying to muck with the record of what has or has not been done.
Yeah,
Anywhere, anytime, for anybody. Anyway, enough of that from me.
Yeah, and I don't think it's ever a partisan thing. I think it's just the nature of government, people in power. You get to a place, perhaps, if you're not careful, where you can rationalize things that are clearly wrong, and that's I think what's happened here.
Or you have minions that want to suck up.
Yeah. Yes. So anyway, that was one of the big issues that dominated question periods, and I think it also spoke to the importance of sitting in the fall. These stories came out because of work that was done in question period with the tools that the opposition has, and it wouldn't have come out without that work. So I think it speaks to the fact that the people of BC are paying for a legislature and paying for MLAs to do this work, and I think they got good value this fall. And the next fall, if we don't sit, I think people should say, look, you've got to get in there and allow MLAs to do the work that
you'll get back for the budget.
We'll be back in the spring. So the spring session we always have, and that's another important opportunity. But it should be spring and fall every time without question. And this year we've had it, and I think good work has been done.
What else has come across your radar screen these days?
Well, I think because this time of year, of course, it's the highway. It comes up again and again, and I think that's just a matter of continuing to push for the maintenance, but also ultimately we have to get a solution on the Trans-Canada through this area from the Alberta border to Kamloops. And there's been some work done and some improvements, but it is not the fix that is needed, and the sooner that is done, the better. And so just continuing to hound government as an opposition member, and just trying to make sure that when the next election comes, the NDP is putting forward a commitment that's concrete and one that I hope they'll follow through on, unlike what we've seen with the signs of the last two elections, where it sure sounded like the BC Liberals were committing to doing the work in an energetic way, and it hasn't turned out that way. But that's
just as usual, they made all the right noises just before the election, and you haven't heard much since.
Yeah, and it makes it difficult for then the NDP to come in as a pledge and have people take it seriously. But I'll work on that and make sure that to the best of my ability, it's there, and hopefully the new federal government has interest in doing some work, and maybe that will get provincial government interested in some work. So that's one thing that's always there. There's a number of other issues. We've of course been talking at the legislature a lot about energy policy. With Site C, there is there's a lot of debate about that. The project has started and is in its early stages. It is a project that has not gone to the BC Utilities Commission, which is problematic. The Utilities Commission has been around for a long time, and it's an independent group of energy experts that look at projects through the lens of ratepayers, and will decide whether it's a project that makes sense. Among other work, it does make sense for BC Hydro to do, and helps with setting rates and things like that. So it's supposed to look after the interests of ratepayers. Now, what has happened recently is in the last number of years, the government has removed the BC Utilities Commission as oversight to about $12 billion worth of spending. Pretty substantial. Now, what the NDP is proposing is that we would move up, instead of Site C, a number of programs around retrofits, a number of programs around working with existing BC Hydro infrastructure, including moving to do Revelstoke 6, which is scheduled to be done in, I think it's 2030. It's
down the road.
And we would move it right up. And
how far would you move that up?
well, because a lot of the work has been done in terms of planning, you could actually realistically get started on some of the initial work in 2017. So this is still an extended
Environmental stuff, things like
Yeah,
that.
it's still an extended period.
Economic and social impacts.
Yes, and then you have. I mean, there's still work to be done, but it could be done you know, from given the size of the projects in a relatively timely way. And I think people know that with Revelstoke 5 and Micah 5 and 6, there's some real benefits to those projects for BC Hydro.
Let me take a break here for just a second. Hey, I gotta go.
Okay, so,
It's okay. Oh, come on. Just we're taping an interview.
yeah.
So sorry.
No, don't apologize. So I'm just now at the top of the screen. You should see rec in red letters.
Yeah.
And we're good. Are we in center?
Yeah.
Our foreheads aren't cut off below our knock.
No, they're not.
Perfect.
Look perfect.
Not semi-headless. Good. I did an interview once like that, and it was just, oh God, it was so embarrassing. Wasn't with you. Okay. All right, yeah. Well, we got another local issue shaping up here. Norm, I'm sure you have heard over the last few years that there's a lot of concern about development of gravel pits.
Yes.
In Revelstoke. They seem to be proliferating, and the Current is going to be publishing a story this coming week that is going to make a lot of people sit up and pay very close attention, because there have been, as I understand it, and I've seen some, although not all of those documents yet, and I'm sure you have seen some, and you've talked with one of the proponents, or with one of the opponents of the
That's right,
project.
concerned citizen. Yeah.
That there could be a gravel pit being built behind where the old frontier is, at the base of Mount Revelstoke National Park.
Yes.
And that the proponent for that pit is also seeking mineral rights, below ground mineral rights, that go beyond gravel and sand.
Yeah.
Obviously believes there's probably still some gold or copper or something in there worth extracting.
Yeah.
And I understand that he wants to use Parks Canada roadways within the park in order to access his gravel pit.
Yeah.
Now this is going to cause a lot of people to just go, what are these idiots thinking about? I can call them idiots, you can't.
Well, of course, gravel pits are often modes of contention for communities or the people who live close to them. There's often dust issues, there's often noise issues, and they're difficult to live close to. Having said that, from a government perspective, there's the need for the material, and therefore there's a set of rules that sometimes make citizens feel like they don't have the sort of say that they should. Certainly in the case of some of the residents of Revelstoke that have been dealing with existing gravel pits.
Those are the ones off West Side Road.
Off West Side Road.
Across the river from Columbia Park.
Yeah, there's no question that, I mean, that's an issue that I've been working with some of those residents for a long time, and there are some issues that are truly frustrating for people who live close there. The way things are supposed to work, it doesn't feel like they're getting the information they're asking for in a timely way. When they ask for dust studies, for instance, it's done in the winter, when obviously it's a very difficult, a very different situation than in the middle of the summer, things like that. So there's dealing with all of those issues have been very difficult for some residents of Revelstoke and frustrating, and it's difficult to give answers that are satisfying as to why it should be like this. It doesn't feel fair. And of course now there's the possibility of development in proximity to the national park, and I think that'll be an interesting story.
It's also right at the entrance to the city,
right
across from the highway mall that we're going to get to in a minute.
Yeah.
And the proponent of that highway mall absolutely did not know that there's some yo-yo, somebody local who should know better, plans a gravel pit directly across from a $20 million mall. what's wrong with this picture?
Yeah. So that'll definitely be one to watch, and of course, in my critic role as well as the representative for the area, it's one that we'll certainly be watching and take to government and look for answers for people who live here. So.
I understand, as you do, that there are legitimate needs for gravel. I mean, you know, particularly when we're pushing for and screaming for major development or redevelopment of the Trans-Canada Highway. That's going to require a lot of material, a lot of gravel. I don't build this kind of thing without lots of material. You need it. It's essential. So everybody here understands that, and yet it appears that when there is public opposition or public concern, and particularly health concerns for some people who are particularly elderly, and even the IHA has come out and saying that it has renewed concerns over chronic pulmonary COPD.
Yeah. Disorder. I don't know. Disease. I'm not sure what it is.
Whatever it is. COPD, which is a major breathing issue for some people. And you know, I guess my question for you at this point is that our ministers and the government MLAs are not a horrible bunch of people who are basically sociopaths or psychopaths who don't care.
Yeah.
But at some point, why will they not at least respond and deal fairly openly with the public on issues like this?
Well, there's a couple of factors. First, from the government perspective, the proximity of gravel pits to where work is being done, it's quite a bit of money.
Yeah.
You know, if you move it even a kilometer away. So there's cost factors that even for local government, they will want gravel pits in proximity. Having said that, to live close to one is a real problem with the dust and the possibility of health issues as well as noise. So you have to get the balance right, and I think for any government it's going to be complicated. And having said that, there's certainly people that are in Revelstoke that have tried to deal with the issue, and they in no way feel, and I think legitimately, that their interests are being seriously looked at. So they would have concerns about dust, and as I say, the study that's done is done in winter, and so there's how legitimate is that in terms of looking at dust, which obviously isn't much of an issue normally in the winter, when it would be far more of an issue in the midst of the summer and under certain situations. As well, in terms of what the community looks like, if you enter a community and you're entering a place with all sorts of gravel pits, the impression you have of the community is a place that's attractive to stay and to perhaps even live or open a business. It changes. So all of those things need to be considered, and I think there's no question that the balance doesn't feel right here.
No.
Now, is it only Revelstoke that has this situation?
No, there's plenty of other communities do.
A lot of other communities do too. But it is something that is not beyond the competence of government to get right, to get the balance, so that people at least feel heard. What we're finding with some of the situations is freedom of information requests are slow, or don't come, or are incomplete. The information doesn't really seem to make sense. There's a lot of reasons why people would be frustrated. Having said that, we do get responses. They're not satisfied, but government does respond, and government does. I do go to the minister and talk to the minister, and he's open, but nothing really to the satisfaction of citizens.
They'll listen, but they're not doing anything. It's easy to sit there and say, nod your head and smile.
Yeah.
And agree that somebody whose wife has COPD and is in tears half the year because she can't breathe properly in the summer, spring, summer, and fall. It's something else. They're going to discover it's going to be something else altogether different with this particular proposal. Because it's on the border of a national park.
Yes.
A major Canadian national park, and on the Trans-Canada, and in a ski resort with ambitions. and that are not going to get realized if one of the first things you see is a gravel pit.
Yeah.
This is going to attract the national media. The CBC will come to town, CTV will come to town, Global will come to town.
Yeah.
They will all send news crews here to do stories on this, and our local and provincial governments better be aware of that. And even you, as an MLA, you're going to get asked some tough questions. A little easier for you to answer because you're in government.
Yes.
But you're still going to ask questions. This is going to look ugly on a lot of people. Fortunately, not look ugly on me. Good for them.
Yes.
So it's going to be interesting to see how that shapes up. And I don't want to discuss much more about this because it's going to be the subject of a major story in the Current on Monday, November 23rd.
Okay.
And I don't want my competitors and colleagues to get a leg up on the story. Sorry, guys. Talk to you soon. Having said that, let's move right along. Next one is we have 2 issues. Next one is
Well, the federal election.
yes, we're
Yes.
going to talk about.
Yeah.
There was major change in the Canadian national political structure with the Liberals forming a majority government, for an unexpected majority government. Everybody thought it was going to go the New Democrats' way, and it didn't. As a conservative, I hoped it was going to go my party's way, but I realized pretty early on that that would be difficult given Canadians' appetite and desire for political change at a fundamental level. So that's why Stephen Harper's gone. We have Rona Ambrose. For a while, at any rate, we'll pick somebody else to be a leader. But Justin is now Prime Minister. We Conservatives are in the second place, so we are the official opposition. And New Democrats, and we elected Wayne Stetsky, former mayor of Cranbrook, to be our MP. Wayne is in the third party position, which is a tough one to be. It's a very tough position.
It can be complicated. Of course, Trudeau was in the third party. He was the third party, and he came through to win. No, I think Canadians clearly were ready for change, and certainly Mr. Trudeau captured that enthusiasm for change. I mean, let's face it. There's a lot that's very appealing about him as an individual, and I think as he stepped forward, he's clearly following through on the expectations that he raised in terms of how he's proceeding. I have to say I was excited about the change. I think that having been in government for 10 years, the Conservatives have had their shot at it. Mm-hmm. I think that you saw towards the end of the Liberal reign last time, that went for I guess 10, 12, 13 years with Chrétien and Martin, that there's a staleness that comes in. Inevitably there's a sense of entitlement that creeps in, and all of those things. I think it's important for the public to check with a change in government. You can see the energy. You can see when you hear the ministers that have just been given the portfolio. There's certainly it's clear that their intent is to do the best that they can, and I think so. Change is a good thing, and it's a wonderful thing about our democracy. And I think, having lived in Africa for 6 years, we should never take for granted the ability here in Canada to go through a major change in government in a very peaceful and respectful way. I mean, Mr. Harper went from being Prime Minister and lost all of his power without a complaint. Yep. I think his comment was, "The people have spoken." Well,
that's right.
That's a wonderful thing.
You know what? He looked so relieved when he said those words that night. I really wondered how was he going to react, and he just looked like, "Oh my God, somebody else's problem now. Thank you, Lord."
He's done his years of service, and I think for the most part you can see that it takes a physical toll, and there's no question that it's difficult not only for him but for the extended family. But I mean, that is a wonderful thing to have a change, and to change government peacefully and to get something different that people are enthused about. And, well, I sat with New Democrats on election night watching the local election, but people were just very pleased, even as NDP lost seats in Quebec, just to see that there was going to be change.
Mm-hmm.
People were excited about that.
Sure.
And at the end, it turns out that the NDP squeaked in, I think, largely thanks to Revelstoke and Nelson and a few of these communities that really sent back a strong, that consistently voted NDP. But people were just, those that participated understand that in the end, it's how people vote. And everyone respects that. It's a wonderful thing.
And you got to respect that. You got to give you got to give Wayne the assistance that he needs to be an effective representative for
the area.
For the area, for the riding, even though he is not in the official opposition or in government. And that makes his role a lot harder. It makes it harder for him to achieve things on our behalf, but it can be done. And he's going to require a lot of help from people right across the political spectrum. That's fine.
Well, certainly there's an opportunity with the highway, with the federal Liberals making it clear they're going to be spending on infrastructure. I think it's again the chance to go back and make the argument for federal participation in what is really a national highway. It's our national highway. So there's opportunity there, and he's also the critic for national parks. So that's again something where there's a lot of local interest. So
well, he may be, as critic for national parks, particularly with this gravel pit issue. This may be something he can sharpen his teeth on.
Yes,
and do us some real good.
Exactly.
So let's see what happens with that. One last issue to discuss here, and I think this is really not going to be a very long discussion, but as everybody who lives in Revelstoke knows, there is currently a very divisive discussion going on regarding zoning approval for a third supermarket and a third pharmacy as anchor tenants at a proposed highway mall on the Trans-Canada at the intersection with Highway 23 North. Now, this is not a provincial issue, but I'm quite certain, and I know for a fact that some people are interested in what Norm may or may not be able to do with regards to this. So I'm inviting Norm to kind of explain how this fits in or not, as the case may be, with his responsibilities as our member of the Legislative Assembly. Norm.
Well, not to, like many politicians, to sidestep a contentious issue, but really the role that I would play here is limited. A lot of the things that I push for consistently is the ability of communities to make their own decisions. For that local decision making, not only within our communities, but on the land base to have a say. And Revelstoke has always been a community that's been very effective at making its own decisions. I mean, you can see it from Revelstoke. Revelstoke, like in my critic role and as an MLA, I've traveled throughout the interior and the north, and there are a few communities that have it together like Revelstoke in terms of it is a beautiful, consistently beautiful community with community art, trail systems. All of that points to a community that's able to make decisions, and sometimes that's difficult. That's a complicated issue. So, I really don't have, the right to step into it. It is a zoning issue, which is municipal government. I have known Mayor McKee as in my previous role. When I was MLA and he was mayor in the past, we ran against each other. He's back as mayor. I know Mark well. I have a ton of respect for him and for that council, and I think that through your mayor and council, the community is going to reach a decision that's good for the community. Like I say, I see consistently good decisions being made here, and I really wouldn't be in a place to second guess a community that engages in these decision-making processes really actively, and when I look around, I see consistently seems to make the right decision. I mean, compared to any community that I've seen in the interior, this is the community that seems to have its act most consistently together. It's a beautiful, beautiful, well-planned community, and I hope people are at the end of the process satisfied that that's again.
Yeah. Oh, don't.
Well, if
You were like, oh, I'm out of here. It's done.
thank you.
Okay, perfect. Thank you.
If I have anything to say about it, and some of the other people that I know who are thinking about this have anything to say about it, we will be able to manage to find the kind of maiden Revelstoke solution that we need. It'll take some time. Norm, thank you very much again.
Well, thank you.
It's always a
the
pleasure to
opportunity.
see you in town and to do this interview. And ladies and gentlemen, thank you very much for watching, and we'll talk to you again soon.